So what's the deal? Is it like less?
There's nobody else waiting to get it. Oh, I get that. I can get that for you.
Test.
Can you still accrue beyond like 20 years?
Yeah. Oh, okay. The problem is you never go above it.
That's it. You're still getting it.
So that's what's coming.
Be reasonable. Something. Well, maybe that's your legislature.
Yeah, I know they've been working, but when I got home, they started doing this. We'll see what happens. It'll be good, but it's just.
Yeah, things are good.
And then right by the house, I never see out there. No one else.
Every once in a while, I went out. I finally couldn't find anybody to do some shoveling, so I went out there.
Where's the audio?
And as luck
Can't hear anything? I can hear you now.
my shoveling.
That was speaking at the moment.
The guy
Hello?
came the next day.
Hello?
Sometimes they work out something that's not taped off. I'm just standing. They already did the same with Matt.
I think they're still trying to figure out
That was amazing.
Microphone should be right in the front there. Check with the supervisors on the checklist and see if they got some mics. With the people you're checking to vote and see if they got any mics.
Congratulations.
I can tell by the look in your mask eyes. Something's not right. Who didn't know it was
Yeah, we got to go do that again, Sam.
Yes, absolutely.
There was a brief thing in where Canaan.
That flyer. Good.
Okay, because I'm like, my kids are in Florida. I don't really want to go. I have to go. It sounds like I gotta
Like, are you showing a video at all?
The only video you're going to get is from YouTube on the head table. And what you're going to get from me is the seats for the public. There is my charming face, and we have had a camera face, so that's how we got it.
Because the YouTube and the stream are just showing, right?
in the dark.
To be honest with you, I got too much to be honest, bro.
This is nothing. You won't have to be here. Those as well as one of those maybe for you here for the school. The only thing I'm worried about is
Testing volume in the control room.
I mean, it can go one of two ways. Right. It's either going to go okay or it's going to go Yep.
Very awesome.
Good afternoon, everybody. Before we start the deliberative session, we'd like to make a presentation and in recognition of one of our police officers. Officer Bud, could you come to the stage, please? On December 30th, 2020, Officer Bucky stopped at a beach in Canaan Place to check on the town building. When he arrived, he noticed that there were people skating on the lake. He went towards the buildings and turned to look, and out on the lake he noticed that there was no longer two skaters on the lake. Matt sprang into action to help these two that were in trouble. First calling for help, and second to offer what support he could to two ladies in the water. The fire department and the ambulance arrived in a timely manner and managed to get these ladies out of the water and rescue them and get them to the hospital as quick as possible. And they only suffered a minor injury. Even though everybody there did an awesome job in saving these two lives, it was Matt who was the first to arrive on the scene and recognize the situation and to act appropriately, making sure that they were rescued. So, on behalf of the Board of Selectmen and the Town of Canaan, we would like to present a certificate of commendation to Officer Matt Buck. All the town of Canaan emergency service, because without them, this operation would not have been successful. I obviously observed the women that had gone into peril, but there were a lot of other people that put their lives in much greater risk than I did that day. And I believe they need to be recognized as well, along with our partners with the Hartford, Hanover, and Lebanon fire departments, along with the New Hampshire State Police. Every one of those agencies played an integral role in making that operation a success. So I think they all deserve a big round of applause and recognition for that as well. Thank you.
I'm going to come in and do three.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the town meeting 2021, Town of Canaan. As you know, we are a Senate bill town, so there's two sections of our meeting. The first is the deliberative session will be set up, which is being done today. Yes, you have a question?
It's a bad echo. Maybe Mike should turn off his mic while you're using that one.
Or get closer to
We're
your
hearing you
mic.
twice.
Yeah, we're hearing your voice over the speaker, so it's an echo.
It's not what it is. I'm sorry, the microphone on the computer is not on. So what's happening is that there is a microphone up there that's taking the crowd. at the same time. So we can try to drop the screen down about halfway and see if that'll kill the echo. But it is something we have to live with.
That or maybe just get closer to the speaker closer because we're hearing your voice before we're hearing it over the speakers.
Yes.
His is, Mark.
Yeah, Mike's is good.
All right, we're going to try it without the microphone. How's that? Everybody here okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Control room here too?
The control room, is it going out to online viewers? Do we know that yet? Again, we'll ask in the control room. Do you know if you can hear, if the online viewers can hear?
I'll ask him.
Without the microphone being on.
I think,
say yes.
Try it.
yeah, the microphone at the podium is not.
Hear us now?
Barely. He's bringing a handheld microphone to you, Dale.
Okay.
Because it did seem like we were hearing what you were saying, and then it was coming through the speakers, so that was the delay.
Testing 1, 2.
Much better.
Is that better? Okay. Hopefully that's going through the online system as well. As I was saying, by the way, welcome to our online viewers. If you see us, hello there. Thanks for joining us either on Zoom or on YouTube, I believe. The next thing is, like I said, today is the part one of the town meeting, which is the deliberative session. We're going to discuss the articles, and if they need to be amended, we can do that. They will eventually be placed on the warrant, and we'll take that up on Tuesday, March 9th at the fire station. Okay. Please join me in observing a moment of silence to honor our men and women in uniform serving around the world, and to reflect on our community and striving to make our town a better place to live, work, and play, not only for today, but in the days to come. Thank you. You may be seated. Okay, a couple of ground rules first before we start. Everyone today in the auditorium and in person has a right to speak and to do so in a fair and orderly manner. So, next, if you wish to speak, please identify yourself for the record because of COVID and the difficulties that we're facing. The town clerk needs to have the names of persons that speak. If you wish to speak, please identify yourself for the record. Only registered Canaan voters are allowed to vote today. Are there any unregistered voters present today in the building? If so, raise your hand. Okay, thank you. In the case of a motion to cease discussion, the voter at the mic will be allowed to speak and finish their remarks. All amendments will be accepted in writing only for the record, and only one amendment at a time will be allowed on the floor if there are any amendments. In the case of a paper ballot vote, 5 signatures are required on a written motion to use a paper ballot. And for the sake of clarity, negative motions will not be accepted. In other words, no means yes and yes means no. So if you're going to make a motion today, just put it in a positive spin, okay? And that's all the ground rules that we have. The first thing that we're going to do is go through the warrant. So if you would turn to page, well, on my page it says page 74. I'm not sure why that's that, but Article 1 anyway. That will be actually on the ballot in March, so we can move to Article 2 now. And Article 2 says, are you in favor of the adoption of the zoning ordinance proposed and approved by the Planning Board? The Board of Selectmen does not recommend the article, recommend this article. So I need a motion to discuss Article 2. Somebody want to do that? David? And a second? Al? Okay. Is there any discussion on the Article 2, the proposed zoning ordinance? If there are, we have if you want to speak, we do have a microphone, which is right down front, which we will bring to you actually if you'd like to speak on this.
Is this zoning for the whole town, or?
Okay, so the rules are you have to come down, identify yourself, and speak in the microphone. Or we can come to you.
Todd Darling. Just wondering, I don't know anything about this article, so is this zoning for the entire town?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you repeat your question?
Sure. My name is Todd Darling. I'm just wondering, I don't know anything about this article, so wondering if this is zoning for the entire town?
I can answer that. I can answer that question.
Okay, can you bring the microphone over to this gentleman?
My name is Tom Milligan. How's that? My name is Tom Milligan. I live on Canaan Street. This article only applies to the historic district. The zoning that's asked for is only for the historic district. It does not affect any other part of the village or of the town of Canaan. It is strictly for the historic district.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Yes.
So shouldn't it say so on the warrant article that it only affects King Street? Because if I were going into the voting booth without knowing anything about this, I would, if I'm not in favor of zoning, I would vote it down. It's misleading.
The town report will be out in about a week and a half, and it will have a copy of the ordinance in it. And actually, it does not have a copy. On the website, you can click on a link that will give you the entire copy of the ordinance.
But for someone going into the voting booth, if they know nothing about this other than its zoning, they would assume it would be for the whole town.
Well, my name is Sean Tangy. I'm legal counsel of the town of Canaan. The reason why it's drafted the way it is it's because the style of the question comes from statute, so it's required that it's posed that way. Certainly, the town's going to make available the entire zoning ordinance is proposed. Obviously, it's limited in scope to the historic district, but unfortunately, we're limited in what we can do in terms of the form of the question. The form of the question has to comply with statute, and it comes right from the statute in terms of the way it's styled. So, unfortunately, the voters will have to look at the actual draft of the ordinance to determine the scope of it. But again, the intention is to have a limited scope of the zoning ordinance to the historic district.
Okay.
Yes.
My name is Thomas Opel. I'm also on Canaan Street. And I was appointed to a vacancy on the planning board just a couple of months ago. But my understanding is, and town council can respond to this, the initiation of this warrant article came about because the structure of the historic district in Canaan, which has existed for over 50 years, the structure, the legal structure, doesn't comply with New Hampshire legal standard, New Hampshire legal, how other historic districts are dealt with in New Hampshire. And so the advice from town council was that rather than simply an ordinance for the historic district, which is what has existed going back into the, at least the 1980s, maybe even beyond that, that basically it had to be taken and transferred into a zoning ordinance. That was the requirement. We were told that it must say zoning ordinance. And that certain aspects of the historic district, such as setbacks, building heights, things like that, must be covered by a zoning law. But this particular warrant article changes nothing other than this legal bookkeeping, if you will. What exists today in the historic district would continue to exist. It would just be in two places. One would be a zoning ordinance regarding only the historic district. And then the historic district ordinance, which would cover things like paint colors and other aesthetic issues, if you will, to match the current character of Canaan Street. So in order to, so this zoning ordinance covers only the existing historic district, nothing else. And anyone attempting to pass a zoning ordinance for any other part of the town would have to put in another warrant article. Obviously, it couldn't come up this year. It would have to be next year or beyond. So this covers nothing except what exists today within the historic district. Just legal bookkeeping. And I hope I'm not a lawyer, but I hope I got the legal part correct, counsel. Thank you.
Yeah. Probably.
Thank you. This is Nate DeLoe, Budget Committee. I just have a question, and I'm just ignorant about this. So, we implement this zoning ordinance. Are we also, does the town, who's going to have jurisdiction to enforce it? Are we going to have a new zoning board of adjustment, or is it the planning board, or is it the select board? How is that? And I guess that's a question for town council.
So the town has already adopted innovative land use controls, which is a form of zoning. They also have an overlay district that was created some time ago. As a result of those zoning initiatives, the town has already adopted and created a zoning board of adjustment. It's called the Board of Adjustment, but it's ostensibly the same type of regulation. And it's the same body. So the body is already there, it already exists in town, so they're not creating any new form of government, they're not creating any additional bureaucracy. You have it already. All we're looking, the only thing that they're looking to do with this amendment is to create, a comprehensive zoning ordinance for the historic district. All other zoning initiatives, the innovative land use controls, the large wind energy system ordinance that you have, all of that will remain in place. Even if this zoning ordinance is defeated, this amendment is defeated, that will still remain in place. So that's all they're seeking to do at this point, is create a comprehensive zoning ordinance for the historic district and maintain all the other zoning initiatives that have happened in the past.
All right, any further questions? Yes.
My name is Travis Anderson. I see that this is not recommended by the selectmen by a vote of 3-0. I just wonder if they'd like to speak as to why they don't think this is necessary.
So back when the initiatives that were just mentioned by the lawyer were proposed, the word zoning was not included in the water protection ordinance. Zoning wasn't used in any of those regulations that it went in, so when the town voted on it, they didn't know they were voting for zoning regulations. This one at least has it on there. And we have always been opposed to zoning in the town of Canaan, and no matter how you slice it, it's a zoning ordinance. Yes, it can be amended with the warrant articles, but you can always go back and say, well, in 2021, you voted for a zoning ordinance. So that's why we oppose it. Thank you.
Further discussion? All right, there being none, we'll go ahead and place it on the article, we'll place Article 2 on the warrant as written. Article 3, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,200,000 gross budget for the construction and installation of replacement water mains from Canaan Street Lake to Canaan Water Treatment Plant, $400,000, and thence to Bruce Road, $550,000, and to construct and equip the high service booster station to supplement pressure, $250,000, the project, and to authorize the issuance of not more than $550,000 of bonds or notes in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to issue and negotiate such bonds or notes and to determine the date, maturities, interest rates, and other details of such bonds or notes. Furthermore, to authorize the withdrawal of up to $150,000 from the Canaan Water and Sewer account for the project, with a balance of $500,000 to be funded by grants, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to accept on behalf of the town any federal, state, or private funds that may become available with respect to the project. All payments related to the proposed bond or note shall be paid through user fees generated from the users of the Canaan Water and Sewer system. Payments for construction of the proposed improvements shall not be paid for by property taxes, but shall be paid for by bond note proceeds, retained water and sewer revenues, and grants for the construction of this project. This construction may be completed in phases, provided that there is sufficient appropriated funding then available to complete the phase. A 3/5 ballot vote is required to pass this article. The Selectmen and the Budget Committee both recommend this appropriation. May I have a motion to discuss Article 3? Thank you. And a second? Thank you. Any discussion on Article 3?
There's a couple of slides showing on the, well, of course you can't see them. Oh, that works. Okay, so I'll try to repeat it. So we have slides that are appearing on YouTube, which so far I don't think you're able to see. And we are looking for approval to borrow $550,000 to complete at least half of the water main going from Canaan Street Lake to the village. If we don't do the replacement, the main line will continue to fail. It's failed so far twice this year. Actually twice in the last 3 months. We've had two failures since the first of the year. This vote requires 60% approval. It's essential for the water system to replace the water main. It's over 120 years old, and it's just not holding up anymore. It will increase user fees on the water and sewer system. The best guesstimate right now is somewhere between 30 and 40% increase for user fees. It will also change the minimum charges So if you're only using 50 gallons a quarter, you're going to go up to a base number of about 46 bucks a quarter. That's the way it used to be about 10 years ago. And we have to do that because we have a number of people who are only paying $10 or $15 a quarter. So those rates are not yet established. There will be hearings on those rates later this spring. But the goal would be to have rates approved by the 1st of April for bills in July. And nobody on the Board of Selectmen wants to do this, but there really is no choice if we're going to maintain a workable water system. And for those of you that are on the system, you know that we've had problems repeatedly over the last 3 weeks, never mind the last 3 months. So this is not getting any better. We had a major break last year, and this will continue. The only solution is to replace the line. You can't see it, but when you see the town report, when it comes out, there'll be a shot of where the line is, but basically it goes from Canaan Street Lake to the water treatment plant on Fernwood Farms, and then from Fernwood Farms down to Bruce Road.
Yes.
Todd Darling. As a water system user, I totally agree that it needs to be upgraded. My question, which I think you kind of answered, and it would be nice if it was on the warrant, but I guess you can't because it's not decided yet, would be what the increase would be to the water and sewer users, because it's kind of open-ended. So you're voting on something you have no idea how it will affect you financially, but I understand that it is the necessary system upgrade. But is there any way to get a number on the warrant before voting?
Hopefully everybody in the room is on the flash email system. For the last 3 weeks, we've been publishing a link that you can get the estimate of rates for every single household in the village. I will tell you that for a typical family of 4 with 12,000 gallons a quarter, that the cost would go up $100 a quarter, a total of $400 for the year. If it's a larger facility like the school or frankly the town of Canaan, the cost will go up more because we have a lot more usage. I believe that the cost on the school goes up something like $300 or $400 a quarter.
And is that in perpetuity, or does that drop off when the bond is paid off?
No, it's not in perpetuity. The best thing that could happen, it would run for 25 years, but the best thing that could happen is we have something that's good and something that's bad. We have a bad water main. What we have that's good is we have double the capacity that we need. So if we had more households or businesses using water in the village, those rates drop proportionally. So let me say it again, we could double the size of the village and it wouldn't have a dramatic impact on costs. It would in fact reduce the capital costs that we have to pay to keep the system operating. So the best thing that could happen is if we got 5 businesses in the village that use some water or sewer that would pay the bill.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on Article 3? Okay, we'll place that on the ballot as written. Article 4. See if the town of Canaan shall raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $4,127,517. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $4,099,997, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town or by law. Or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with the RSAs to take up the issue of revised operating budget only. The Board of Selectmen and the Budget Committee recommend the passage of Article 4. I have a motion to discuss Article 4. David? And Scott second. Any discussion on Article 4?
Before getting into the discussion, I would like to offer a motion to amend. I move to increase the general fund appropriation by $23,700. So instead of the $4,127,517, it would go up by another $23,700. In support of that, I have a written copy of the motion signed by 11 voters in the town. And if I could, I'd go on and explain why. No. Oh, sorry. I totally agree. I can't report that. The total would be $4,151,217. So we tried to build as tight a budget as we possibly can. In the town report, you'll see that there's an action in the handouts that you got today on the back side of the detailed budget. It talks about all the increases and decreases. And we did a pretty thorough job of cutting out things which were not necessary to spend this year, understanding that everybody is squeezed by COVID-19 expenses or lack of revenue. Unfortunately, we squeezed a little too much in the budget and left out housekeeping for the entire town of Canaan when we cut personnel in government buildings. So, despite my efforts of trying to get Bob to sign the highway department to clean all the buildings, what we need to do desperately is to put the $23,000 back into the budget. We do not carry any slush or surpluses or extra money anywhere in this budget. So, talked about it with the board a week ago, and unfortunately, the only course of action is ask you to amend this warrant article to increase it by $23,700. Those funds pay for people to go and clean all of our departments, from the most challenging to the cleanest department that we have, but that's what the services are. And if you have any questions about this or the budget, I'll be happy to answer.
Further questions on the amendment? Basic incompetence of the town administrator, trying to cut too much out at the last minute. The question was, how did we miss it in the budget process? And that was the answer. We spend a fair amount of time trying to balance it when things happen. So we had a couple of unexpected increases that occurred in December before the final hearing. One was an increase in disposal fees at the transfer station. And there were a couple of others like that. So we went back through, and anything that looked obvious that we could cut out, such as in government buildings, we did. So it was a rush at the tail end to cut out something to balance the other costs that were critical. So before this motion, the increase anticipated in taxes was 1%. So as a result of this motion, so you get an idea of how important something like this is in terms of budget, it will increase the taxes by 1.9%. So $20,000 in a $4 million budget increases the tax rate by 1%. So I try, department heads that work with me try to keep the cost down as much as we absolutely can. Sometimes a mistake is made. Fortunately, we caught it before the deliberative session, otherwise we would have had to take it out of some other department, because it is an essential service. So my apologies to all of you. On the other hand, I hope you at least appreciate the fact that we work as hard as we possibly can to keep the total cost down. Any further discussion? Okay, so we have an amendment on the floor that we're going to vote on. So we're about the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, fifth line down. We're striking the 4,127,517 and replacing it with $4,151,217. All those in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it, and it's been amended. Any further discussion on the Article 4 as amended? All right, we'll place Article 4 on the warrant as amended. Let's go to Article 5, Water and Sewer Budget, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $203,471 for water and sewer operations for the town of Canaan, with $115,748 to be raised and appropriated for water, and $87,723 to be raised and appropriated for sewer. These funds are raised by water and sewer fees with no amount to come from property taxes. The Selectmen and the Budget Committee both recommend the passage of this article. May I have a motion to discuss Article 5? Yeah, and a second? All right, thank you. Any discussion on Article 5?
There's an irony in this budget item, and that is that the total budget is $203,000. Last year, the total budget was about $195,000. So, from the looks of it, it only went up $8,000. The reality is we've only had $150,000 coming in for revenue, so $160,000 coming in from revenue. So that's why we need to raise the fees next year. The budget has always been roughly about this much, but it never became an issue until we had to replace the line. The difference in the price is replacement, the debt service for the replacement of the main water line. And if we had been getting this revenue over the past 10 years, then it would not have been an issue. One of the problems we have with the state in getting grants and even loans, the state came up and gave us 2 bits of advice. The first one was that we don't charge enough for water, and I think my colleagues here at the table will back that up. So if we don't charge enough for water, we're not worthy enough to get additional funding from the state. Somebody on the computer just said we're not worthy. So the long and the short of it is that there's a perception that we're not charging enough for the rates. And then the other perception was, well, you should have some skin in the game, some money that you're putting towards this project. So we are. We're going to put basically every nickel we've got and $100,000 of the capital reserves into the water main to fix it. So then the question will be, will the state now step up and give us that funding? So on the water and sewer budget, it does include the debt service for half of that water main project.
And you explained what happened 10 years ago, why, how we got into this jam we are right now, please?
Yeah, that's a good question. The question was, how did we get into this predicament about revenue 10 years ago? We had a major construction project on water and sewer 10 years ago. One of the conditions was that we had to restructure all of our water rates to do it on a per gallon basis. So if you use a lot, you pay a lot. You use very little, you pay very little. So we followed their advice. We put in new meters to make sure we can measure every gallon of water, and that's how it got built. That's why today we have some people paying $5 a quarter for water. The state 10 years later said, no, we never said that. But in fact they did, and they required us to come up with a rate structure that did that. So we came up with a fairly complicated rate structure that was a structure for water and a structure for sewer. Part of the rate was to pay for the capital costs of the system, the pipes, the tanks, all the things that are hard items that are in the budget that have to be paid for, and usually have a fairly long life. So we had one rate for all the capital costs for water and sewer. we had another rate for the operating costs for water and sewer. So none of us really knew how that was going to come out. It was implemented. We gave the rates to a consulting firm that runs our water and sewer collection program. And unbeknownst to us, until last year, they only included half the rates. So the only thing that's been billed out for the last 10 years was the operating cost for the water and sewer. Now, we expected to have more money collected during the last 10 years, but we blamed it on the water conservation, which was pretty significant, but not that significant. So there was a problem that came from the consulting firm that writes the scripts that go in the computer programs to do the billing. Well, we can't go back and get the money. But it means now we have to have that capital money in order to do the water main. Is that it, Steve?
Yeah, does the consulting firm have any liability in that, setting the rates incorrectly?
I don't know. Pardon? Well, the state was involved in it too. I don't know. I think that probably we're both at fault. They shouldn't have made the mistake. We should have caught the mistake, and it shouldn't have taken us 10 years to catch the mistake. The good news is we caught it, but it certainly was not helpful. Yeah, well, if we could convince the state, we'd be happy to do that.
Further questions? Please state your name and then go ahead.
Dan Collins, sorry. Question is, who was responsible for overseeing the committee who didn't do their job properly and who missed it for 10 years?
So ultimately, the Board of Selectmen are responsible because we are the water and sewer commissioners. However, seeing that none of the Board of Selectmen at the time are trained in this type of field, we relied on the guidance from the Water Treatment Management Company, and we relied on the direction from Department of Environmental Services. So, but if you want to say who does it fall back on, it falls on us.
Thank you, Scott.
And of course, the irony is that you would have been paying the new increase proposed for this year for the last 10 years. We did make changes on the water management company. We replaced it with our own operator, who one of the first things he did was come in and explain to us we had several major deficits in how the system was being run, and he corrected those for us. And he also pointed out that the $1 million project that we did 11 or 12 years ago, that was based on the recommendations of Department of Environmental Services and the engineering firm, didn't need to be done because the cause of the problems we had 10 years ago was operator error. So the bad news is we spent $1 million. The good news is we have a wastewater and water plant twice the size. But we still have to fix the line, otherwise we really don't have a water system.
Further questions? Okay, we'll place it on the warrant as written. Article 6, see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the total sum of $38,000 for the purchase of a new four-wheel drive police vehicle to replace the 2013 Ford Taurus Interceptor, and further of this total to authorize a withdrawal of up to $38,000 from the Police Cruiser Capital Reserve Fund with no additional amount to be raised by taxation. Any trade in value or proceeds from the sale of the old cruiser is to be applied to reduce the purchase price to be within the appropriated $38,000. The Budget Committee and the Board of Selectmen both recommend the passage of this article. May I have a motion to discuss Article 6? Yes, Dave McAllister and who else? Okay, thank you. Any discussion on Article 6? There being no discussion, we'll place it on the warrant as written. Article 7, see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $155,689 for partial funding of the flood mitigation improvements in Canaan that will replace 3 bridges, the transfer station, Potato Road, and Gristmill Hill, and 2 railroad trestles behind Williams Field and Barney residence. This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance as of December 31st, 2020, a surplus, which will require that no additional amount be raised from taxation. Specifically, this sum equals FEMA flood reimbursement funds received in 2020 and are part of the unassigned fund balance. This article is to be non-lapsing through December 31, 2025. The Selectmen and the Budget Committee recommend the passage of Article 7. May I have a motion to discuss Article 7? Sadie, and the second? Okay, thank you. Any discussion on Article 7 at all?
This project started out a year ago as a $6 million project. I think it's down to about a $4.8 million project at this point. It replaces Gristmill Hill Bridge, it replaces the Potato Road Bridge, and it replaces the transfer station bridge. If those bridges were replaced on the usual formula and schedule, it would be another 10 years out. And the town share, each of those bridges would run between $600,000 and $1 million. The town share would be about 20% of those bridges, of that cost. So it's about $2.5 million. So for the same amount of money that we have been raising, for the most part, the same amount of money that we've been raising for the first 2 bridges, we're going to be able to do the 3 bridges plus trestles along the river. The result is to allow the floodwaters to pass through the village quicker and then reduce the impact of flooding in the village significantly. I think we only end up with one building that gets flooded with a flood like the one we had back in 2011.
Further discussion? Okay, we'll place Article 7 on the warrant as written. Article 8. See if the town will vote to establish a community center capital reserve fund on the provisions of RSA 35-1 for the creation of a community center and to raise and appropriate the sum of $1 to be placed in this fund. Further, to name the legislative body voters as agents to expend from said fund. The Selectmen and the Budget Committee both recommend the passage of this article. May I have a motion to discuss Article 8? See, and a second? Dave? Thank you. Any discussion on Article 8?
You'll see more about this in the town report. We don't have a PowerPoint that is visible. So the lot in size is about 1/5 of an acre. It was originally designed to be for a community center. So 1/5 of an acre is about 8,000 square feet. What's that? Oh, this one? Oh, capital reserve. Yeah, but they're tied together. So again, there's a property, the Cozy Corner, that's owned by the town. In 2002, the town bought it for a community center. That's the next article. It's too small for a community center. There'd be virtually no parking left on it for a community center, and it'd be a traffic hazard as well. So what we're trying to do is to sell that property, get as much money out of the property as possible, and put it into a capital reserve account for a community center, so that the intent is on it. Problem is, under the laws of the state of New Hampshire, we can't do it as simply as to say, will you let us sell the property and put the money into a capital reserve? So there has to be a separate vote to create a capital reserve for a community center. Then there has to be a separate vote that allows us to sell the property. Then there has to be another vote next year to take the proceeds from the sale of the property and put it in the capital reserve. So this is a 3-step dance. First step is to create a capital reserve account, so there's a place to put the money. The second is to sell the property and get as much as possible out, and no, there is no known buyer at this point. It would be marketed through a realtor to get as much out of it as we could. And then with a promise of the Board of Selectmen to recommend putting that into the capital reserve next year. And then asking you to put it into the capital reserve. And that one sale could fund as much as 1/3 of the new community center.
Yes.
Russell Lester. My question is, who's the controller of this, the people or the selectmen?
Voters. The electorate.
Once it's
They
established.
have to decide. They have to decide to create the account, they have to decide, oh, by the way, we can't, that was another wonderful expression of support from DRA. We can't tell you who it is. So it's the voters by law, it defaults, is that correct, Sean? By law, it defaults to the voters whenever a capital reserve account is created. So they don't want us to tell you it's going to be the voters. So it's going to be the voters, and they decide whether to sell, they decide whether to create the account, and they decide how to spend the money.
Thank you.
Yes. They're going to have to start over.
I think Article 8 says that the legislative body, the voters, are the agents to expend.
Any further discussion on the capital reserve creation for the community center? Article 8. There being none, we'll go ahead and place it on the warrant as written. Article 9. See if the town will vote to authorize the sale of Cozy Corner property located at 1202 US Route 4, identified on Canaan tax map as map 15A, lot 49A, containing .18 acres, and building that was acquired by deed of the Gene C. Davis Revocable Trust on May 30th, 2002, and recorded in Book 2688, page 831 of the Grafton County Registry of Deeds. Passage of this article shall ratify and amend Article 6 of the 2002 Annual Canaan Town Meeting to remove the following language. This property to be used exclusively for the location of a new community center. If approved, the sale shall be conducted through a public listing for sale and using a commercial realtor. The proposed eventual use of the sale proceeds will be to create a community youth center. The Board of Selectmen and the Budget Committee recommends passage of Article 9. May I have a motion to discuss Article 9? Russell Lester and Foley. Mr. Foley, thank you. Any discussion on Article 9? This gentleman, and then we'll go over here.
My name is Travis Anderson. Let's say Article 9 passes and we decide to sell Cozy Corner, but Article 8 is defeated. What are we going to do with the proceeds that we get from selling Cozy Corner?
I got part of the question, if you could hit it one more time. If this article passes,
Let's say Article 9 passes and we sell Cozy Corner, but Article 8 is defeated, and we don't create a capital reserve fund for the community center, what are we going to do with the proceeds from the sale of Cozy Corner?
it would go into the unassigned fund balance in the general fund, so we can't spend it willy-nilly. We still have to go back to the voters to spend the money. It makes no difference whether it's which way it goes. If there's money left in the general fund that was not appropriated at the beginning of the year, that goes in the unassigned fund balance, and that has to be approved by the voters. The intent by the Board of Selectmen is to make sure that the public has an opportunity to vote on that, to put that money in the account next year. Frankly, if Article 8 were to fail and Article 9 passed, there is still, and the property was sold, that money still could not be spent this year, and it still would be eligible to be used by creating a capital reserve next year and putting the money in next year. So there are a variety of ways to get there, but it can't be used to buy a Mercedes.
Okay, thank you.
This is just a technical question. Maybe the attorney can speak to it, and maybe it doesn't matter. But the very last words, two last words in Article 9 say youth center. And nowhere in the previous warrant article or any other place in either of those articles does it mention a youth center. So I don't know if that constrains the youth or not, and whether he should even be in there.
So if I understand the question correctly, I think your question is related to the last sentence of the warrant article, which talks about at least the current intent of the town in terms of the use of the funds. The last sentence really isn't operative in terms of what's going to be used for the funds. It's just to identify potential use of those funds. And again, we won't be, the town won't be able to utilize any funds until 2022. When the town meeting votes to authorize the expenditure of those funds. So again, it's just an opportunity for the town to identify what they'd like to use those funds for in the future.
And if you go back to Article 8, the vote to establish as a community center capital reserve fund.
Any further discussion? Yes.
Claude Lemoyne. So if we were to sell Cozy Corner property, which I heard Mike say is not large enough for a community center, does the town have already owned land upon which it would be reasonable to build a community center that would have parking? That hasn't been mentioned. It seems to me if we sold one piece of land, if we had to buy more land, we would have zero money to build a building. I'm sure you've given us some thought, but I'm curious for the voters, do we have land where it would make sense to build a community center?
It would be nice if you could see all this stuff, but you can't. So, yes, the town does have property. It has Williams Field's property. It has other acreage, somewhere around 3-4 acres are in the same neighborhood. So we currently have land. As a matter of fact, in order to, the criteria for building a community center has to be appropriate for the use that we've seen over the last 10 years when we use Canaan Hall, that type of thing. And it has to be able to store outside recreation equipment. And it has to be no tax increase. So if we had to buy land where there was new money to be pumped in to buy land, that would be a problem. So what we have in mind is to take lands which are not currently being utilized, sell those lands, take the money from those lands to build a community center on other town land. So the idea is to do it without any tax dollars. Does that answer the question?
Yes. Go ahead. I apologize for not asking more specifically. I was curious, what land does the town have, I'm thinking in the village area, that would be suitable for a community center? What specific land?
The specific land, it would not be in the best interest of the community to discuss with any more specificity, but if you want, I will, and then cause a problem. I think I see it waived, or did you want me to do that?
I will defer. If you think it's not in the best interest of the community, I will defer.
Thanks, Claude, I appreciate that.
Yep, go ahead.
Does the town of Canaan at this point own what I call the old log cabin store?
legal counsel said yes.
Okay, and then, not to stir anything up or whatnot, my question is, would that be an option as a place to build a community center?
And the answer would be yes.
Excellent, thank you.
All right, anybody else?
Yeah, so, okay, but just to repeat the last one. The question was, did you hear, I don't know if you heard Claude's question, does the town have land other than the Cozy Corner property to build a community center? The answer is yes. And the answer also on that one was, and there are other lands which the town has which could be sold and use the funds from those lands to also go towards building a community center. The next question was, specifically, does the town own the property at the end of Depot Street, the cash market property? And the answer is yes. And then the second follow-up question on it was, has the town considered using that property? The answer is yes.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll place Article 9 on the warrant. As written, Article 10, see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $35,000 to be added to the previously established Bridge Capital Reserve Fund. The Selectmen and the Budget Committee both recommend the passage of this article. And as a side note, it's estimated that this sum will result in an increase of the tax rate by 0.10 cents and would add $19.88 in taxes on a $2,000 home. May I have a motion to discuss Article 10? Mr. Foley? And a second? Dave McAllister? Yes. Any discussion at all on Article 10? Okay, there being none, we'll place it on the warrant. Article 11, see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be added to the previously established Revaluation Capital Reserve Fund. This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance as of December 31, 2020, and will require that no additional amount be raised from taxation. The Selectmen and the Budget Committee both recommend the passage of this article. May I have a motion to discuss Article 11? Yes, and Russell? Any discussion at all on Article 11? Yep, come on down.
Is it far too late to ask a question on Article 10?
Yes. Well, you can ask a question, I guess.
Oh, that's what I mean. Is it far too late? Yeah. If I could, please. Sorry.
Again, Dan Collins. My question is, I'm curious, what is the capital reserve amount right now for what is the amount in the capital reserve for the bridges as we speak?
Off the top of my head, it's over $200,000.
So,
yeah, I'm sorry. The question was, what's the amount in the capital reserve for the bridge fund? Cindy, do you know it off the top of your head? It's not a no. No, it's in, wait a minute, hang on, I'll give you exactly, hang me all the time. $201,700.
thank you. And then follow-up question is that often all used throughout each fiscal year, or is there much of that left over? I guess what I'm getting at, does it make sense to try to raise $35,000 that will raise the taxpayers' taxes when we just realized that there was a $23,000 slip in the budget that we have to now to try to find funds for? Can we maybe ask to appropriate funds for something else? Again, I'm just curious to how the process works and if that's an option instead of raising taxes.
The reason we have these capital reserve accounts is so that we don't have to borrow money every time we need to do something like repair a bridge or buy a truck. They're all there for a specific reason. And we are in a routine now of putting this money in every year. It's no different than saving up to buy a car or something to that effect. So taking money out of that in the long run is not going to benefit us, because whatever we take out to make up for some other difference is going to cost us in the long run. So this way, it's a limited amount of money, and we're not scrambling at the last minute to raise a whole bunch of money. So does that answer your question?
Yes, yeah, so, yes, it does.
Okay, anybody else? I guess we're talking on something that we shouldn't be talking on, but anyway. We've talked about the Capital Reserve Bridge Fund, but we've already passed that.
This may help though. I'm Claude Lemoy. I'm the chair of the Capital Improvement Planning Committee. And I would just like to echo a little bit what Scott just said. $35,000 a year is the amount we've been putting in almost every year to the Bridge Reserve account. Thing to recognize, well, there's a couple of things to recognize about bridge replacements. They come only every few years. When they come in large lumps, like $600,000 cost or $1 million cost to replace a bridge like Grist Mill Hill or Potato Road. When the state DOT replaces those bridges, if we are prepared, we, the town, pay 20% of the cost, and the state pays 80%. Even 20% of $1 million is $200,000. We don't want to have to come up with $200,000 one year because the state finally gets around to replacing that bridge. So we do continue to replenish this account, $35,000 a year. Over the span of 10 years, we get to the $350,000. When and if we get the state to replace a bridge that's falling down, we will have the money in the account to pay our portion, and again, enjoy the benefit that the state will pay the other 80%. So it seems well worthwhile to maintain this account and to continue building toward those occasional but very large expenses.
Thank you for your explanation.
Okay, let's get back to Article 11. And we've already read that. And do we have a second? And okay. Are any discussion on Article 11, which pertains to the appropriation to revaluation capital reserve fund? Okay, there being no discussion, we'll go ahead and place Article 11 on the warrant as written. Article 12, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $30,000 to be added to the previously established Government Buildings Capital Reserve Fund. The Selectmen and the Budget Committee recommend the passage of Article 12. May I have a motion to discuss Article 12? Dave McAllister and, yep. Thank you. Any discussion at all on Article 12? Government Buildings Capital Reserve. There being no discussion, we'll place that on the article as written. Article 13, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $155,000 to be added to the previously established capital reserve fund for highway equipment. This sum is to come from unreserved fund balance as of December 31, 2020, and will require that no additional amount be raised from taxation. The Selectmen and the Budget Committee recommend the passage of Article 13. May I have a motion to discuss Article 13? And Russell? Okay. Any questions on Article 13? Highway Equipment Capital Reserve. Excellent. We'll place that on the ballot as written. Article 14, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $30,000 to be added to the previously established Police Cruiser Capital Reserve Fund. This sum to come from the unreserved fund balance as of December 31st, 2020, and will require that no additional amount be raised from taxation. May I have a motion to accept Article 14? Mr. Foley and Mr. Lester. All right, any discussion at all on the Police Cruiser Capital Reserve Fund article? There being no discussion, we'll place Article 14 on the warrant as written. Article 15, the Fire Truck Capital Reserve Fund. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $55,000 to be added to the previously established Fire Truck Capital Reserve Fund. The Selectmen and the Budget Committee both recommend the passage of Article 15. May I have a motion to discuss Article 15? Mr. Foley and...
Fire chief.
Oh, the fire chief. Didn't see you behind the mask there. Okay, any discussion? Yes.
I would like to recommend that we, to recommend this article for the $55,000 to the Capital Reserve Fund so that we can continue building our account for a purchase in the future. And not to change the article, but I would like to see that if things change, that the money for capital reserve is automatically included in the budget and not so that it's left out as a separate article that is being indicated as indicating the tax rate. Whether it is either place, I know that it will. I would hope that it would come back in under the regular budget and not be set aside.
Well, we had a real battle with DRA a few years ago, and they told us unequivocally we cannot take money out of the general fund to put into the capital reserves.
But if we're taking or money that comes from the unreserved fund balance, that we at least get back into that category in another year. I realize there isn't enough for this year for all of our projects.
So let me tell you one thing that we could do. The question for people on the computer. The question is, could we get the money out of the general fund to cover the cost of capital reserve for the fire trucks? And the answer was the DRA did battle with us a few years ago and told us unequivocally we can't do that. And we pointed out that that's not what the law said. They pointed out that they didn't care, and they went to the legislature, and then they changed the law. So it now says what they say it says. So what we can do is, if we have unanticipated funds, remember that we get unanticipated funds that come in during the course of the year. So in the event, and we have done this as you know, in the event that we have money that comes in that's unanticipated, then we could put that aside, not in the capital reserve, but put it into the non-lapsing account that we have, like for ambulance service or firefighters association, but we'd have to work on figuring out a way to legally do that. Right now, the law requires that if it's going to go into a capital reserve, it's got to be done by the voters by a separate warrant article. You will know that we try to do whatever we can to cover those costs any way we can, but live free or die also means that we have to live with the rules that they give us.
I understand that. My point is, though, that if we are buying for highway, if we are doing this for police department out of unreserved fund balance, that in another year, when we have more money, I would like to see the fire department be back in that status. I don't understand the difference between having it operate one way. I do, because we don't have the money. I just want it to be noted that we need to return to that procedure so we're on equal footing with police, highway, and other departments. Not this year, understand that. Just in other budgets that are coming up.
Dale's going to get angry with me, but I'll try to address it. So we just talked about raising the budget $23,000 and increase the budget by 1%. The total amount that goes into capital reserves in a typical year is $350,000. That's what, 12 times that? So it means we would have to raise the tax rate by 12%. So yes, once it's raised, then it would stay at that level for a fair amount of time. The biggest problem is at the same time that we have capital reserve needs, we inevitably have more money coming in than we anticipated because of motor vehicle, new purchases, or things of that nature. So what we're trying to do is run a budget as tight as we possibly can, while still guaranteeing that there are monies, as Scott said, available for future purchases. So here's a question for you, Bill, not to be positional, but how many times has the fire department's item been voted down by the voters in the last 12 years?
Not Mike, I just want to highlight the procedure in which it is done. I would love at another time that we'd be able to get back to that. And I realize it's not this year, but I just want it noted that it would be nice if we could eventually get back to that system. That's all I'm telling you.
So in the interest of fairness, we ought to put all 320 into the budget for all the other departments?
That's not what I'm saying, Mike. I'll yield the floor.
Again, Claude Lemoy, Chair of the Capital Improvement Planning Committee. I would like to echo what the Fire Chief is saying. It is not clear, to the general public anyway, myself included, why 3 times this amount, for example, for the Highway Equipment Capital Reserve Fund, says no additional amount from taxation, and yet for the fire department it says we have to increase the taxes by 16 cents, tax rate by 16 cents and so on. There is a significant difference, and I feel that the answer to the question just now has been evading the question. And I will suggest that in next season's capital improvement planning, I think the Capital Improvement Planning Committee will ask some harder questions about unassigned fund balance as opposed to money to be raised from taxes. That has not perhaps gotten as much specific attention as it should in the past. But again, I don't believe that the fire chief's question is being answered clearly. Perhaps we could try that again.
Sure. So, yeah, Bill's concern is that why should there be a risk every year to ask the voters to approve the money going into the capital reserve? Claude Lemoy got up. Okay, is that what the question is?
That's not the question.
Bill, was that the question? Why does it increase the taxes on fire and the other ones don't?
That's probably closer to the point. I mean, I'm not looking for that to happen, for a change like that to happen this year.
I got it. Different answer. Sorry, I didn't hear it. So, the reason that some of these do ask for taxes, we tried an experiment 2 years ago and put the revaluation on. We don't have enough money left in unassigned fund balance in any given year to fund all the capital reserves. When we had surpluses in our budget 10 years ago, and cushion in our budgets 10 years ago, it was easier to fund all of the capital reserves on the money that was left over at the end of the year. We have not been in a position where we could do that for over 3 years. So part of what we have to raise has to come from taxpayers paying for that capital reserve. And for people to think it's foolish, it isn't foolish. What is foolish is that we got to pay a lot of interest to have something that's done because we did not plan ahead. So it is a proper thing to do capital reserves. There are some that are less popular than others. There have been times when people were not thrilled with police cruisers. So we can't afford to stop the whole capital reserve system for police cruisers because somebody's annoyed at a police department this year. The same thing is true for revaluation. I look at the vote totals every time we have an election. We only got our revaluation system funded the last time by about 15 or 20 votes. Why? Because people really detest raising their taxes to have their valuations increased. So there are some political reasons why when we have to pick between fire and police and highway and government buildings and revaluation, some have more support than others. There's a big chance we take when we ask the voters to pay for government buildings. Nobody likes to pay for government buildings. They think that we can go on forever. All right, so we are taking that chance because we have to, because we cannot fund everything out of capital reserves. If you want to put it into a lottery, and we pick the winners every year, who comes out of capital reserves, maybe we can. Claude, it's your committee, we can talk about it, we can bring all the department heads in as we have in the past, and we can duke it out in terms of how that works. All I can tell you is right now, there is not sufficient funds to get it out of the unassigned fund balance to cover all $350,000 for capital reserves. We are in fact only covering $250,000 out of capital reserves. This year, $100,000 has to come from taxes.
Okay, Vicki McAllister. I think on the fire, how much was put aside last year for capital reserve? What I'm seeing on here, as far as the additional taxes, if the amount was raised from last year, then you're going to put the increase in taxes. If it's not, if it's the same, like $30,000 to the police, then you don't put additional property tax impact on that.
It's a great idea, Vicki, and the question was, how much did we put in fire for last year? And if it's the same year after year after year, then really there is no increase to the taxpayers. And that's correct, except last year. Because the problem was we faced a $334,000 judgment plus all the flood proofing. So if you look at last year's report, nobody got anything except for bridges and revaluation. That was it. So no money came out of any place that went into it. Now, the good news is, you're correct. We restored everything back to the way it was the prior year. So that means year over year, if the voters this year approve $55,000 and they approve it again next year, then there is no increase to the taxpayers. The way I've been told by DRA, I think, is that I have to show if that particular warrant passes, how much is it going to cost the taxpayers on their property? Not how much is it going to cost over last year, but how much is it going to cost this year? So that's what we report. But Vicki's absolutely correct. If we approve the $55,000 this year, and there's another vote next year, and they approve the $55,000, there's no extra increase.
If you look on here, Article 10, Article 12, and Article 15 all impact the taxpayers. And it's my understanding, basically what was just said, was that we just did not have the money this year to put the money, or take it out of the undesignated fund. That's why there's an additional impact on the taxpayers. The other option was to not fund them at all. So that's why we went this way.
My last comment would be that I am just looking that at some point in the procedure, when we know our finances are better, that the fire department not have to be singled out as, to get our capital reserve money, that it would have to be in a warrant article that would impact, directly states what it's impacting. That's all I'm trying to bring to your attention.
Further discussion?
Dan Collins again, thanks. Couple things I'm curious of is...
Could you hold your mic up a little closer?
I'm sorry, yeah, trying not to. It's either blasting or not, so thank you. Do we know when the date of the purchase of the previous new fire truck was? What year?
So we purchased last, I believe it was 2019, we had gotten a utility truck and a command vehicle for the fire department.
So are those vehicles considered the fire truck itself, or does the fire truck capital reserve embody other vehicles in the department?
There's a question.
Question is, when was the last fire truck purchased?
Yeah.
2011 was the last major truck purchase. The other two that we did last year, one was in the neighborhood of 45,000, fully outfitted was closer to probably 55, 60. The Tahoe was in the range of probably 40,000 fully done.
Thank you. So I guess kind of where I'm at here and why I'm asking questions on these certain articles is I'm trying to, probably much like everyone else who lived in Canaan, trying to figure out how we can kind of keep our tax rate from just steadily increasing. So if I don't ask questions, I go into it ignorant, so forgive me if I'm asking questions that seem redundant. So I guess how often are fire trucks replaced, and is there a maintenance bill? But maybe instead of getting into that, maybe I cut to the chase and say, is it a possibility on these articles that are going to raise our taxes? And I'm all about keeping some money in a slush fund, capital reserve fund, so we have something to go to when we need it. I don't think any business operates without it, and that's the bottom line. However, I do know that as a business owner, that if I take too much money out of my pocket or incoming, and I put it to a reserve fund for certain things that can't be touched otherwise, I can pretty quickly sink the ship. So sometimes instead of taking $20,000 and putting it into a savings, maybe we take $10,000 and put it into a savings, knowing that we're putting something there in good faith. But maybe we don't have to have such a tax increase on top of it. So I guess I'm wondering, is that an option, or are there set amounts that have to be put in, because if we don't get matched funding maybe? I understand that, but otherwise, can we put less into the capitals to raise the taxes less, maybe?
So my understanding of the question is there a way we can fund these by using lesser amounts, is that correct?
Can we put less into the reserve
Okay.
and try to appropriate
So
somewhere else?
the numbers that you have in all of these capital reserve amounts are numbers that come from the capital improvement plan committee. The CIP committee puts this together over a period of time, and they have years when vehicles are scheduled to be replaced.
Sure.
So that's where the numbers come from. Yeah, we could put less in there if we wanted to, but it just means more we're going to have to make up later on.
But if we're hurting really bad now,
Well,
you know, so that's why I asked, and that was one of my other questions. How often?
and the fire truck that Chief Bellion talked about, I believe we paid cash for that truck. Didn't borrow a dime, and it was a substantial amount of money, and that was because we stuck to the numbers that we received from the capital improvement committee.
Understood, but my question again is it an option because everyone?
Is it an option this year to put less in because of, I mean, our unemployment rates in this country are some of the highest ever. People are hurting right now. We don't need our taxes being raised. So without shaving things completely, because believe me, I had a structural fire last year and lost everything, every tool I own and everything. I understand the importance of our fire department, and I'm thankful they were there. But my question is, do we have to put the same amount as always when this is far from the same type of year as always that any of us have ever seen? Can we slice some things a bit? And if we slice a few things here, can that reduce our tax rates to help everybody want to live in Canaan? Is it an option?
It is an option, but you would have to go back and you would have to amend every one of these capital reserves that we just submitted. You could do that if you want to, but it's only going to hurt us in the long run.
But having tax increases every year has hurt us in the long run now, because we don't have
Actually,
as
your
many-
taxes, your town portion of your taxes has stayed relatively flat for a long time. We have increased over the last couple of years, but it's not because of this.
Sure, but this is an increase that I'm asking if we could try to figure out some way to have it lesser, that's all. I'm not saying don't put anything in. I agree there has to be something. You have to have something for a rainy day or you're caught without an umbrella, right? But do we have to have the whole umbrella right now when it, you know, that's my question.
So the general discussion so far has been, why can't we cut it down this year because it's so bad this year and try to make up for it when it's a better year. Is that?
Well, maybe not make up for it, but go back to business as usual. Then.
postpone
There is business
purchases.
as usual. It doesn't exist on the globe as I know it right now. So maybe we make some adjustments as the town of Canaan to try to help ourselves get through this. And then,
Okay,
you know,
so there is a reason to have a capital reserve account.
Sure.
We've shown that over the last 12 years and before that, Dave Barney.
I'm in total agreement with the capital reserve account.
Please. So Dave Barney started it before I was here, and he had the right idea. It makes more sense to put money aside in the future now for the future. So when is a good time? So let's look at what the tax rate was in 2009. It was $7.35 a thousand. So what is the tax rate this past year been? $7.51 a thousand.
How much
Okay,
your property value has increased?
so I just want to finish if I can. Okay, so 36 cents a thousand. So for a $200,000 house, it's about $65. And we're able to keep that rate down in part because of capital reserves. If you were to, and I don't want to drag this out a long time, but trucks cost $350,000. We have 3 or 4 major pieces that can cost $350,000. We have $350,000. We had $350,000 in the account last year. With this vote, it'll go up to $400,000 to pay for $1.2 million in equipment. All right, so if you really want to defer it for a couple of years and then have no fire truck, that's great. But frankly, this is the most sane, reasonable way to do it, which is to create a capital reserve account for everything that's major, whether it's an excavator or a bulldozer or a 10-wheel dump truck or whatever the piece of equipment is, to put it into an account and put it away. It's a savings plan to have the money available for that equipment. Before, at least one member of this Board of Selectmen was around at the time, maybe more than one was, there was a period where this town went in the hole $750,000. And as part of restructuring the town after that, one of the things that the selectmen did was they paid off all the debt. So in 2015 of this year, all debt was paid off for the town of Canaan. So what's the result of that? It freed up about $40,000 a year that could go into those capital reserves to pay down the future. There is no good time to say, let's stall. We did that last year, and the only reason we did it was because we had $250,000 in flood damages that we had to cover. And over and above that, we also had a lawsuit that we lost for $334,000. A $600,000 loss is a bad time. A 1% increase in taxes is not a bad time. So if you want to pick and choose, I'd suggest wait until you got a crisis of $500,000. That'd be a real good time not to raise some money for capital reserves. And there was a long discussion all last year about the deferral of 1 year of the capital reserves. And that was a very difficult decision to make, to defer it just 1 year in the face of $550,000 in losses.
I appreciate your sarcasm, Mike. My question is not to defer anything. My question is, can we put less in there so we can then not try to appropriate as much funds other places that will raise taxes? That's the simple question. It's not asking to defer anything. Right. Gotcha. So thank you for answering my question.
So I would like to speak as a member of the Budget Committee and also as a member of the Capital Improvement Plan. This process starts in the summer. It's not like we just arbitrarily picked these numbers. We have several meetings with all the department heads of the town, and there's a lot of collaboration. You know, people have a wish list, they pare it down. The things that we're budgeting for are really the bare minimum of what we need. We have a capital improvement plan where we are looking at all of our assets, mobile, non-mobile, and buildings 20 years out. We know what we have, we know what needs to be replaced, and we know how much we need to set aside. So when I first joined the Budget Committee, we were spending $40,000 or $50,000 a year on interest to repay those loans. that we're saving now because we're setting this money aside. It would also be really nice if we had public participation throughout that process. We have public meetings for budget committee, the capital improvement plan meetings are public. It's really the time, I think, to ask the questions and to delve into it more deeply probably than it is at this point in the process.
I will tell you that answered my question. Your answer, in short, to me was, that is the minimal that we think can be put in there and still make anything happen. That was my question. Can we put any less in? And the budget committee is telling me after review that that is the minimal that we can put in there and still make it worthwhile. That was what I was asking, and I appreciate your answer. Thank you.
I concur with that answer. I'd like to add a little more to it. Dan, your question is appropriate. But I do want to point out, to pull out of what Mike said, the town budget this year, as I read the numbers here, is being increased by about $44,000 on 4.1 million. In other words, just a little over 1%. That's this year. In my mind, that does not constitute a bad year, tax-wise or whatever. Last year was, for the two major reasons Mike pointed out, especially that lawsuit that took $345,000 out of the town. And I do want to tell you that it was mentioned earlier, but I want to repeat it. The capital improvement plan, last year, several capital reserve accounts were not just reduced, they were eliminated last year. We went to zero. And this is one of them, and that's one of the reasons why I think the direct answer to your question is, could we or should we reduce this $55,000 this year? Because we made it zero last year, I think the answer is no, that would not be a good idea. And we did look at, now the capital improvement plan, by the way, is a long-term plan, has lots of numbers in it. We look at, are we going to go negative? Are we going to get to the point where we need to buy a fire truck and we will not have the money for it? If we were to reduce the $55,000 by very much, the answer would be we'll get to the point where we need a truck, and then we'll have to borrow money, or do without the truck and take risks, those kind of things. So the truth is that this is not a bad year tax-wise. Last year was. And when it was, we did reduce, we took a pretty drastic action on the capital reserves. We reduced several of them to zero. So that's why the CIP committee recommended, and the budget committee approved our recommendation that we restore the capital reserve contributions to, in this case, what they were, or perhaps a slight increase depending on the needs of the plan.
So not only do I understand better, but I'm sure people watching at home do as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on Article 15, Capital Fire Truck Capital Reserve Fund? All right, it'll be placed on the warrant as written. Article 16, see if the town will raise and appropriate the sum of $44,970 to be added to the previously established capital reserve fund for highway equipment. This sum to come from anticipated insurance proceeds related to the loss of the 2011 Dodge one-ton truck and plows highway truck number 411 in a fire on January 2nd, 2021, and will require that no additional amount be raised from taxation. The Selectmen and the Budget Committee recommend the passage of this article. May I have a motion to discuss Article 16? Mr. Foley? And Mr. Mendez, okay. All right, any discussion on Article 16? There being none, we'll place it on the warrant as written. Article 17, see if the town will vote to authorize the payment of $10,117 from the non-lapsing transfer station special revenue account to the 2021 general fund to partially reimburse the general fund for the purchase and outfitting of a live floor haul trailer to replace the 2011 East live floor trailer. This account is funded from recycling revenue, and no additional tax revenue is to be used or raised for this article. The article returns $10,117 to the general fund. The Selectmen and the Budget Committee both recommend, the Board of... There's an error? Okay, just so you know, everyone, the Board of Selectmen did recommend the passage of this article. Okay, apparently we do not have to have a motion to correct that, but it just strike the word not on the Board of Selectmen. So the Board of Selectmen and the Budget Committee both recommend the passage of Article 17. May I have a motion to discuss Article 17? Anybody? Okay, all set? All right. Any discussion on Article 17? There being none, we'll place it on the warrant as written. Article 18, to see if the town will vote to approve the cost items included in the 3-year collective bargaining agreement reached between the town of Canaan and the local 3657 Police Department Employees Union, which calls for an increase in salaries and benefits at the current staffing level of $1,560 in '22 and $1,560 in '23. The majority vote is required. The Selectmen and the Budget Committee both recommend the passage of Article 18. May I have a motion to discuss Article 18? Mr. Foley and, who else? Mr. Lester. Okay. Any discussion on Article 18? There being no discussion, we'll place Article 18 on the warrant as written. Let's go to Article 19. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $13,000, oh, this is by petition, by the way, to the Grafton County Senior Citizens Council through the Mascoma Senior Center and Service Link Resource Center for the services for Canaan residents. From July 1 to June 30th, 2020, the Mascoma Senior Center provided services for 281 Canaan residents, and Service Link provided services for 95 residents. These services include congregate meals, home delivered meals, transportation, outreach support, Service Link support, and more. The cost of providing these services was $115,458.31. The Selectmen does not recommend the passage of this article, and the Budget Committee does recommend the article. May I have a motion to discuss Article 19? And second, Mr. Foley, second. Any discussion for the Grafton County senior citizens? Okay, we'll place it on the warrant as written. Article 20. Mascoma Community Health Center, by petition, shall the voters vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to support the Mascoma Community Health Center. This appropriation will be used to offset part of the $76,179 donated by the center to care for the uninsured and the underinsured. Canaan residents over the past 3.5 years, or for the Canaan residents, over the past 3.5 years, or about $21,754 in donated care each year. In spite of significantly lower visits during the COVID-19, the health center served 1,209 medical and dental patients from Canaan during the past 12 months, representing about 24% of the town's population. The Canaan residents made 2,922 visits to the center last year. This is by petition. The Board of Selectmen does not recommend the passage of this article, and the Budget Committee does recommend. May I have a motion to discuss Article 20? Mr. Foley and Mr. Bellion? Any discussion on Article 20? Yes, come on down.
Hi, Pete Thurber. I'm the board chair for Mascoma Community Health Center, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank the town once again for the opportunity to put a petition forward. All of these petition warrant articles for the social services and and other nonprofits that go forward are always well supported by the community. We appreciate the help. This year more than ever, probably all of us need the additional help. As this warrant article said last year, we put forward a lot of time and energy into this community, and this community has always supported us as well. The $10,000 is going to be helping to offset a very difficult year. We've been getting support from the community, we've been getting support from the state and the federal government as well. But this $10,000 is going to go a long way to helping us continue to provide the care that we have been giving for the last 3 years to the people in this town who need it the most. So thank you very much.
Claude Lemoy. I would like to speak in favor of this warrant article in particular. I have no connection to the health center. You know, Mr. Thurber obviously is on the board of directors. Thank you. But just as a private citizen, I hope everybody realizes what a treasured gem this health center is for our community. Thank you.
Anything further? Okay, we'll place Article 20 on the ballot as written. Article 21, by petition, to see shall the voters in the town of Canaan vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $9,550 to be allocated to Advanced Transit, Inc. to help support public transportation services in the town of Canaan. This is by petition, and the Board of Selectmen does not recommend, but the Budget Committee does recommend the passage of Article 21. May I have a motion to discuss Article 21? Mr. Foley and Mr. Lester? Any discussion at all? Article 21, Advanced Transit by petition. Yes, come on down.
Thank you guys, Dan Collins. I'm curious, do we have any hard numbers of how many people from the town of Canaan use the advanced transit on a daily or weekly basis? And if that's not data that you have, I understand. I'm just curious if that is something.
So this is a petition article. It's not put forth by the town.
Okay.
So are there any representatives here from Advanced Transit? We might have an answer.
Okay, again, if you don't, I understand.
So the document I'm looking at is last year's town report. I don't have this year's town report with me. But last year, they had 583,140 passenger trips in all of the routes, 7,559 of which were bordered within the town of Canaan. So the answer is there were 7,559 people that used the bus last year, in 2019.
Okay, so 7,000 people approximately, and we're looking to raise $9,500. Okay, thank you.
As a side note, that's not just Canaan. That's also Orange, Grafton, and Dorchester. But they lumped all the numbers into Canaan's numbers.
Okay, so that's 7,000.
That 7,000 amount has been lumped in, is that what you're saying, because it's the district, right?
Again, it's a warrant article, it's a petition warrant article, so that's what Advanced Transit is saying, but that includes all of Grafton, Orange, Dorchester, and Canaan residents, not just Canaan.
Understood. And the transit does not go further than Canaan, correct?
That's right.
Thanks. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, Dan, I just ran the number, and it's about 19 people a day.
Thank you, Scott. Perfect. And that's from the 5 towns.
Four.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
4.
Any other discussion? Article 21, Advanced Transit by petition. All right, we'll place it on the article as written. Article 22, VNH by petition. Shall the town of Canaan vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $9,700 to help support the home health, maternal and child health, and hospice care provided in patients' homes and in community settings by the visiting nurse and hospice for Vermont and New Hampshire. The Board of Selectmen does not recommend, but the Budget Committee does recommend the passage of Article 22. May I have a motion to discuss Article 22? Mr. Foley and Mr. Lester? Any discussion at all? There being none, we'll place Article 22 on the warrant. We're making some progress here. Article 23, West Central by petition. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $2,200 for the support of West Central Behavioral Health in fiscal 2020. From July 1 through June 30, 2020, West Central provided 73 Canaan residents, including 30 children, totaling $23,360 in charitable mental health care. As the region's nonprofit community mental health center, West Central Behavioral Health provides mental health services and substance use disorder treatment for many of the most vulnerable residents, including adults, children, and elders. Support from the town of Canaan will help us sustain our commitment to provide mental health services to area residents. The Selectmen does not recommend, but the Budget Committee does recommend the passage of Article 23. May I have a motion to discuss Article 23? Mr. Foley, Mr. Opel? Any discussion at all on Article 23? Okay, there being none, we'll place it on the warrant as written. Article 24, support WISE by petition. Shall the voters raise and appropriate the sum of $2,100 to support the mission of WISE in providing free 24-hour crisis support services and advocacy to victims of domestic and sexual violence and stalking. The Selectmen does not recommend, but the Budget Committee does recommend the passage of Article 24. May I have a motion to discuss Article 24? Mr. Foley, Mr. Opel. And is there any discussion? Article 24. There being none, we'll place it on the ballot as written. Article 25, Public Health Council by petition. Will the voters raise and appropriate the sum of $2,957 to support Public Health Council of the Upper Valley services to Canaan residents in 2021? Services include flu vaccine programs, childhood lead poisoning prevention, community-based substance abuse and suicide prevention, and more. The Selectmen does not recommend, but the Budget Committee does recommend the passage of Article 25. May I have a motion to discuss Article 25? Okay, thank you. And is there any discussion on Article 25? Public Health Council by petition. There being none, we'll place it on the warrant as written. Article 26, support for Tri-County Community Action Program. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $8,825 for the operation of the Tri-County Community Action Program, Inc. services programs in Canaan. They include transportation, energy assistance, weatherization, guardianship, Head Start, homeless intervention and prevention, RSVP, Tamworth Dental Center. The Selectmen does not recommend, but the Budget Committee does recommend the passage of Article 26. May I have a motion to support Article 26? Oh, okay, I stand corrected. It says that the Board of Selectmen and the Budget Committee do not recommend this article. And we'll take a motion to discuss Article 26. Mr. Foley and Dan Collins up in the back. All right, any discussion on the Tri-County Community Action Program by petition? Yes.
I just have one quick question. On each of these, we're given the impact on the tax rate as a pennies on the dollar, and the 200,000. Does that, on the typical $200,000 home, does that represent an average home price or home valuation in Canaan? Does that represent a median? I'm just curious where we came up with the 200,000.
The question is, in the modeling, is the $200,000 value of a home, is that the median or the average value of the home? The short answer is none of the above. We have to show what the impact is on a home. Most people have a rough idea what their home is assessed at. So we use a round number. It could be 100,000, it could be 200,000, but if you know that your home is assessed at 147,000 and so much for 100,000, you can figure out what your tax increase would be. So it is neither the median nor the average, it's just a placeholder in the hundreds of thousands.
Any further discussion? Yes. Claude.
This being the last warrant article, I want to thank the board of Selectmen and Mike Sampson and the Budget Committee and all of you up there for all your hard work. Perhaps, if others agree with me, you might give them a round of applause.
Any further discussion on the Tri-County Community Action Program by petition? Okay, there being no other discussion, we'll place Article 26 on the warrant as written. Is there any other business that may be legally brought before this town meeting? Yes.
Yeah, as the chief of the Canaan Fire Department and head of the ambulance service, I am not trying to diminish any way in the recognition and the importance of Matt Bunton's very timely call. However, I would be remiss in not stating that the fire department and the ambulance need to be publicly recognized for their part in the ice rescue. Without their training and participation, the rescue would have not taken place. And I want people to know that in the community, we are continuing our training. We're scheduled for more this month, and equipment development to further increase our ability to respond to incidents of this type as more and more people to continue to enjoy the outdoors in our community.
So, Chief Billion, I so note your comment, and we do appreciate them, and we will direct the town administrator to put a letter of recognition on the next time he sends out the townwide email.
I understand that and I appreciate it, but I think the public recognition coming from you as a board in a public venue is very important. I know where I was that morning. I was out getting my flu shot, my COVID shot, had to run back. We had lots of people there. One of the gentlemen who went in the water is standing right here. No hesitation. I would like them to be publicly recognized in a forum, where the selectmen are present. I think they deserve that. I got there late. I'm thinking of the other people that give up the time, no matter when, no matter where we go. We're not asking for a lot, just that public recognition. And I think more than the newsletter would be important.
The Board of Selectmen recognizes the fire department and the ambulance service for the wonderful service they provide to this community. We understand your hard work, and the fact that you're a volunteer fire department and probably one of the best trained in the Upper Valley is something worth recognizing. So please understand that the recognition of Matt Bunton was by no means to slight the fire department or the ambulance. It was just to point out that he was there at the right time, and what turned into a rescue mission didn't turn into a recovery mission. So by no means do we mean to slight you guys. We know how hard you work, and we know what good you do for this town. So please don't think we take you for granted, because we certainly don't. And I would agree, we should do something else for you guys, but I don't know what that's going to be just yet.
I won't belabor the point. I think all it would take is just show up at a department meeting, you know, a certificate, whatever, that's it. But I think the people that were there need to be recognized. This year, we did 800 calls in the community, fire and ambulance combined. We are the most active call departments in the Upper Valley. It's 64 departments. It's huge, and the time commitment that the members put in is just unimaginable. Thank you.
All right, any other business that needs to be conducted? Okay, there's going to be an announcement right after we close, but we're actually going to adjourn the meeting right now and reconvene on Tuesday, March 9th at the Canaan Fire Station from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. to vote on the officers of the town and also the warrant articles as placed on the ballot today. Any other questions or concerns or anything before we dismiss? I'd like to thank everybody online that was watching, and we'll see you on Tuesday, March 9th at the Canaan Fire Station for voting. All right, Mike has an announcement.